Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. David Tanenbaum here, and I'm with David Russell, who is in London. Welcome, David.
Hello, David. Great to see you again.
You too. And so we are doing the final interview in our series of interviews uh, associated with David's wonderful recordings of the Bach lute works. And we're doing a talk about the fourth Lute Suite today. And sort of poignantly, David brought the final one back to his hometown. He has been doing them in historic churches, and I thought it was just wonderful that you played it in Vigo. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to ask you first. Obviously, you know this palace and museum. Have you played there before?
I have actually. I did a television program there for the Galician TV, maybe 20 years ago or so. So I knew the place. I didn't know that room actually. I knew other parts of the museum, and of course the gardens outside. It's a place that sometimes you just go for a walk and go and sit and read the newspaper or something. And so, of course, I knew it. I think one of the reasons I wanted to do it there is partly because it's my home city,
Sure.
but also because some of Bach's pieces are definitely um, non-religious or layman's music or whatever you want to call it. And so, as the other ones were very much more, in church situations or I thought this one I'll do it in a non-religious surrounding.
Yeah.
But it's not
And
very easy to find a Baroque or old place because most of the places have lost all the furniture and the fittings. And in the museums, there's often a mixture of different things, So you have, maybe one or two wonderful old um, pieces of furniture stuck next to something that's from the early 20th century or something. So what can you do?
yeah, and we have a 21st century guy playing the Baroque music, so that's perfect.
This is true. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, and in fact, this suite was written during a very secular composing time of Bach's life, probably around 720 when he was really sponsored by Prince Leopold and he wasn't writing as much sacred music.
That's
So
right.
let's focus in on this suite. Bach, as we know, wrote many groups of six: the Brandenburgs, the keyboard partitas, the French suites, the English suites, the cello suites that we play, and of course here the violin works. And he often made a big and kind of bold statement with the last of the six. A lot of times they're bigger than the other suites, like the sixth cello suite. In this case, it's very interesting because he abandoned the core movements of the suite. There's no allemande, no
Mhm.
courante, no sarabande, and he included dances that we normally find between the sarabande and jig, a bourrée, a couple of minuets, gavotte, and a very unusual lure. So it's just a wonderful and, as you say, exuberant suite. First of all, I wanted to ask you about your relationship to this suite. How long have you played it? I mean, we all live with these things, but I'm wondering about your specific relationship to it.
I probably learned it when I was 19 or something like that. Um,
Oh, a few
I,
years ago.
yeah, just after I finished my studies here, actually. So I would have been about 20 or so. And I think the first time I played it in public was probably when I was about around 25 or so. And I used it on and off when I had those years. And then I stopped including it in the program, partly because many other people were playing it. Well, not many, but you hear it. And I started playing other works by Bach that people didn't know so well, and like the flute suite that I transcribed, and then some Handel and other things. So it got kind of left. But I always kept it half in memory,
Hmm.
and so actually, of all the suites, it's probably the one I've used more for just warming up and just for the fun of it when you feel like just playing for yourself. That's definitely one that because I've always had it more or less in memory. And
Hmm.
the other ones have sort of come and gone at different times.
Sure.
So
Well, and
it's
yeah,
been perhaps one of the ones that I've known most during my whole life.
I see. Yeah, that's one of the things that makes this project so great is that you have done these unusual Bach pieces, and now you've come back to doing the core lute works that we know and love so much. And your tempos are exuberant; they're really up, and it gives the suite a really positive and uplifting feel. throughout, I would say.
Well, tempo choice, you know, we spoke about it, for example, when you were mentioning it in the fugues, whether I speed up or not in the faster part. And in one place I did, in one fugue, and another I didn't. Because the second place, it was really quite echoey and difficult to deal with. And I felt as soon as I pushed the speed, it wasn't so great. So the tempo does depend partly on maybe the mood of the day and how your fingers are feeling, but also the acoustic themselves, you know, and if the place is not suited for faster playing, then maybe you'll slow it down a bit, and vice versa, of course, you know.
So this acoustic was maybe a little drier than some of the others, I guess, right?
Actually, no. It was a very difficult acoustic to deal with, because what happened is when we got there, the golden room, as they called it, or the golden hall, it would. Sorry, my lights have gone off. Never mind.
There we go.
It was empty, right? And I'd seen it a couple of days before, and what had happened was that they were in this kind of renovation process, and were taking advantage of the more or less closed down. The museum was only open a short amount of time, and so the director said, we can put back some of the things, but only half of it. So it was really roomy, you know, because there was nothing on the other side. All the other walls were completely bare, just the bit that you see. And normally it would have had a carpet, which would have eaten up a little bit of the kind of roomy effect. So it wasn't easy. And, you know, I didn't have that much time really to play around with different positioning. There's also another thing, in that I had decided, maybe erroneously, but I decided I didn't want the mics to be in view. See, so if you do a little bit more closer miking, if it's too roomy, what happens is that you can see the mics all the time. And I thought it'd be nicer not to. Maybe if I do some more, I'll probably just leave the mics closer and what the hell.
Yeah, I look forward to that with the complete works of Dowland later on.
Well, I think I'll leave that one for you.
Okay.
No, but you know, when Maria organized for us to go to these different places, at first they were quite reticent. They weren't very keen on letting people into the cathedrals and the monasteries because of COVID, you know. And one place we got in there, and then some of the other places saw the first film of the first Lute Suite. And so we went to another one, and the monk was saying, oh, aren't you going to film this part? Because I want them to see. So they got more and more, you know, into it. So we actually ended up having more places than we needed, right? And there was one place that's absolutely fantastic that I'd finished the fourth Lute Suite, but we had to go because we'd had this date, you know, that they had given us entry, and it's just a magical place. So I want to do some other things in this other one, because it's a monastery as well, but the church is totally huge, but it was kind of abandoned a long time ago. And so everything was stripped out of it. And all you've got is the stonework. And it's quite eerie, really, because there's huge stone altar in the middle, you know, and you can walk around. There's absolutely nothing else. So I'm thinking of doing, say, the partita, the D minor partita there with the chaconne, because it would be absolutely perfect there. But that's a future project.
Oh, wow. Well, any young player out there who wonders whether classical music is a living art form, just listen to David, a real master of this form, talking about how he's thinking about how changeable this interpretation even was, according to the acoustic. It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Well, you know, all of us know that even our own mood is going to change, you know, and you do have, you know, maybe if you record something in the morning, it would be quite different than if you record it in the evening. So,
the other thing is, once you've recorded it, if you were to do it again, it would be very different because you learned from recording it.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. You know, I recorded the first Lute Suite twice because the first time we made some mistakes. You know, we're not professional videos and things, so something had gone wrong, the focus went out, so I had to go back and do it. I recorded the fourth Lute Suite twice because I did it in another place. I really didn't like it. And the sound was not very good. So I thought, no, come on, we're just going to do it in the museum like we planned to do. And so we went back to the museum and said, can we get in now? Things aren't so bad and things. And the director really went with it. And he'd seen the other ones. So he was much more keen on doing it. So, some of these I've recorded different times. Also, I recorded them, videoed them at home to learn how to do it because, doing this whole thing, there are so many little things. One goes wrong and then that whole take is useless. It's amazing how many things there are. And so we needed to learn to do it. So, of course,
Sure. Yeah.
You learn
sorry, go ahead.
You learn to do it by doing it.
This is exactly right. And again, for younger players, if you're going to record something, practice by recording yourself. And if you're going to video, practice by videoing, because you don't want to be surprised by what you find when you're actually in real time doing it. You can really prepare best that way. Speaking of recording, again, Hopkins and Smith, the great lute player who has made untold numbers of discs, told me that with every session, he re-records the first piece at the end of the session.
Good idea.
I think it's a wonderful technique.
Yes.
He just knows that's just going to be the warming up piece, and he has that
in his
pocket.
And actually, sometimes I'll add to that because I agree entirely. Sometimes you waste too much time trying to get the first piece down. Because you're still kind of getting, and especially if you're doing a video and you've had to set it up yourself, you've been humping stuff up the stairs and things. Then you kind of get dressed and you try and stop sweating, and then you start playing, and you don't play well, And so some of the times when I see the takes, I go, "Whoa! I've got one whole hour of the takes of the first thing I decided to do." What a waste of time, So just try and get it down quickly, and then move on, and then go back. It's the best thing. Absolutely. I've done that once or twice. I agree.
You've done that as well. Yeah. I find
also I'll add one.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, one more thing, David. Also, if you're going to record, say, the first Lute Suite, start with the Allemande or start, because you have to kind of work into the mood. And if you start with the Prelude and Presto, it's difficult to get the tight rhythm and the intensity of the intro, and then the Presto is physically very difficult. So you do have to really be oiled and choose the best moment to play that.
Yeah, I was basically going to say exactly the same thing, that I find that if I record the first piece is too fast, it's just technically challenging. Also, if the first piece is too slow, I think too much. So I try to start with a moderate tempo piece, something in the middle like an Allemande.
Yeah,
I think it can be a really good way to start. So let's talk, since we're talking tempo a little bit, I just had a couple of specific questions for you. This second minuet, you took quite a bit slower. I mean, you really took it down. And I just want to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I've played it. I've trying to do it basically at the same speed, but I felt it loses the kind of smooth lyrical lines that are there. And in the first minuet, it's much more rhythmic and almost no rubato. It's almost dead tight. So I probably did it further than I would have. I maybe wouldn't have taken that risk in a concert. You never know. I might have not done it, but there are several reasons for it. One is I think it does give a sort of gentler moment, and the whole of this suite, except for the lure, is all kind of pushy. Right. So to have just forgetting about correctness, but just the kind of flow of the movements before we move into the bourrée and jig. I sort of like, wow, it'd be nice to have a kind of restful moment for me and for the audience, So I took it a lot slower than perhaps some other people will, but that it felt good to do that.
I think it's excessively beautiful, actually, and I hope none of us think too much about correctness. I mean, of course, we want to be clean, and we want to be stylistically aware and get to the music through an informed performance. But these were musicians. There was lots of flexibility without any question. So
I think sometimes there's the discussion with saying, well, yeah, but if anyone was going to dance, but nobody was dancing to this. I
That's
know,
correct.
and certainly when I'm playing it, there's definitely nobody dancing. So in a sense, you want to make people feel like dancing, but nobody is dancing. Because to actually have somebody to dance to the gavotte, you're going to have to do it dead straight, like, bum, 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 and have no sense of uh, flow in it.
Yeah.
So the act, it's really like it's recreating an imaginary dance. So it doesn't have to be metronomically right.
Yeah. I mean, 35 years before Bach wrote this, they were dancing in Louis XIV's court to Robert de Bizet. But at this point, Bach, who was a student of history, was making art pieces out of these, and they
Yes.
were not actively dancing. That's correct. Yeah.
There's also
Speaking of correctness.
correct. Well, there's also that story that as Louis XIV got older, the minuets got slower and slower because he loved dancing. But so the minuets, when he is young, those should be played faster than when he's an old man or an older person. Who knows?
That's great. So one more question just about the specifics. The lure, which is a really unusual, beautiful dance that Bach didn't use very much.
It's the only one I know.
I think there's one other in one of the keyboard works, but they're rare. But it's known as a slow jig, and you give it a beautiful lilt. And you chose to ornament this one more than any of the other works in the whole series that you've done. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that.
I feel that some pieces come alive if the ornamentation is interesting as well, and I had done that piece a long time ago with a lot more ornamentation on the right hand, across the string trills and much more keyboard like, and I didn't like it so much, so I went back to playing it many more traditional left hand ornamentation. So there are one or two little right hand trills in there, but they tend to make it feel harder. And again, I wanted as gentle a feel in the piece, partly because of this whole suite is so pushy that to have a moment where things kind of slow down and become a little bit looser, I felt was worth it. And it's that and the second minuet. I mean, that's all you have. Everything else is kind of forward moving, in front of the beat all the time.
Right. And especially coming off of that amazing prelude, which is so
that's just,
yeah.
That piece is such a great piece. I can see why Bach used it in other things. And it's just and when you're really oiled and things are working well, it's great to play, so I love it.
So fun, and it speaks so well on the guitar. And one thing that interests me about this is that there is, of course, a Bach autographed arrangement of this suite from the which doesn't say anything about the instrument. And in fact, it's in notation, sort of a keyboard notation, but he altered it when he did it for the cantata. So the figuration in this arrangement doesn't work so well for the keyboard with all those kind of repeated notes. So instrumentation is open. It doesn't quite fit the 18th century harp. Lute players move it to F major, and it just sparkles on the guitar. It just sounds to me better. Well, of course, on the guitars on this instrument than any other. It just sounds amazing.
And it even though it's not an easy piece to play, it actually is quite guitaristic. I mean, if you take out, there's only two corners that we really struggle to get them, and just all the rest is pretty much under the fingers, and it's pretty neat. It's a lot of fun to play. And there's, you can discuss the part where you have the repeated A, whether you put it down an octave. I recorded this some years ago, and I put it all at the violin octave. And this time I leave it down. Whether it's just laziness because it's much easier if you leave it down or not, it works just as well both ways. That passage where there's that sort of halfway through, where it is. And some people say, "Oh no, it should be the octave. It should be at the octave that the violin was." Well, I don't think it needs to be. And I started to like it more with the lower A rather than the middle A, because it, when you record it at that, it's because it's got that, you have to be able to play the two A's.
That's quite a stretch.
It's quite a stretch. I mean, it's possible to do it, but it's kind of squeaky and it's actually quite unguitaristic, really. So I thought, what the hell?
Yeah. Well, maybe you went Louis XIV. You went down for the A's this time.
There you go.
Well, anyway, David, I want to just end this final interview by just really thanking you for doing this wonderful set of videos. I don't know if you know, but you've started something because people are contacting Richard Patterson and asking to do their own projects in this way. So there will
That's
be
good.
followers, and I
I'm
hope you
sure.
do more. But it has
I'm
been
sure.
a confusing and a painful time, and this has been a real offering to do this. And I also want to thank your wonderful wife, Maria, because I know she has been creatively involved and logistically as well all the way through it. Yeah,
It wouldn't have been possible without her, of
I'm
course.
sure. Yeah, I know that's true. So on that note, we say goodbye. Thank you again, David.
Thanks, David. It's wonderful. Loved it.
Good.
See you. Bye.
Okay.